All right. Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it is time for yet another thrilling episode of Let's Talk Metal. Trying to make it sound exciting. Hope everyone is doing well. Tonight's topic was inspired by a couple of things colliding in my brain. Recently, I watched Metal Theologian's newest video where he was talking about classic Savatage, which I've always been a huge fan of. And he made reference to one of their early records and stuff like that. And so we chatted about it briefly in the comments. If you haven't seen that video, you should definitely go check it out. Quality stuff is always from Aaron. But that conversation kind of combined with something else going on. Because it's the holiday season, we're all, of course, hearing the Carol of the Bells all over the radio. It's become a holiday staple since the late 1990s when it was released by Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And so this conversation about Savatage, combined with the Carol of the Bells constantly playing in the background of life these days, reminded me that I had started working on a video topic several months ago, and I just never got back around to it. And so I figured, what better time to do it than now? Because it has a lot to do with Savatage and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So TSO, of course, is known to millions of fans worldwide. The song has become an absolute Christmas staple since its release in the late 90s. They play Lord thousands of shows over the past couple of decades. I've seen them live. It's a really fun performance. And of course, what a lot of Trans-Siberian Orchestra fans don't know is that the Carol of the Bells is an older song. TSO, of course, grew out of the heavy metal band Savatage, and that particular song appeared on Savatage's Dead Winter Dead album, which was released back around 94, 95. It's one of their rock opera albums, telling the story of the Bosnia and Herzegovinian civil war and genocide. So that song existed long before it became an international Christmas time hit. Now, of course, long before Savatage was a rock opera band, they were a much grittier sounding US kind of traditional or power metal band. And that's what Aaron was talking about with some of those early Savatage records like this one. Their debut album was called Sirens. It's got this creepy artwork on it with these little elf-like children with knives crawling through sewers. You can only imagine they're creeping around looking to assassinate somebody or something. Creepy stuff. Sirens has a little backstory to it because this is not the original cover for Sirens. If you haven't noticed yet, we're going down a rabbit hole here tonight, and you're just going to have to come along for the ride. So yeah, this is not the original cover of Sirens. The album was originally released on a small independent label called Par Records, which was run in conjunction with a record store in Florida at the time. And this is the original cover. It's got this kind of big sailing ship. It's hard to see on the picture, but there's like, a little wispy, woman's face in the background, the siren calling the ship to its doom. And that's the real first pressing of the album. And what, some folks that know about the first pressing don't realize is that it also came on blue vinyl, as shown here. This was the rarity that Aaron was talking about in the chat. And he was asking, no, I don't own a copy of this. This has always been a very hard record to find. It's been known to collectors for decades. I was offered a copy in the earlier mid-90s, and even back then it was, a few $100, which no way I could afford that. So never have had that one. The interesting thing with Sirens is that it's the first Savatage release, but the band had a prior release under a different name. Before they changed to the more unique and iconic Savatage moniker, the band went by the name Avatar. And they did release one piece of vinyl under the name Avatar. It was a 7-inch 3-track EP, which is what's shown here. City Beneath the Surface, Sirens, and the Whip. John and Chris had been in previous bands. They do have one or maybe even two singles that predate the Avatar single, but those were very different lineups playing in very different styles of music. Avatar was very much a direct precursor to Savatage. The same little logo there on the sleeve. These songs, of course, got reused on Sirens and The Dungeons Are Calling. So yeah, this can sort of be traced back as the first Savatage, kind of pre-Savatage release. A lot of the other songs that Avatar demoed at the time were in a little bit more of a straightforward rock metal kind of vibe. Not bad material, but the songs here really showcase the direction they would go in. Avatar, I think, was on at least one compilation album back in the day. It was like a local radio station comp. And you will find anthology collections of the Avatar tracks that have been released in more recent years. But yeah, this little 7-inch EP is kind of where it began. Except, got to go a little further down the rabbit hole. There's a variant to this one too. Just like the Sirens LP can be found on black or blue vinyl, the Avatar 7-inch can be found on black or yellow vinyl. And this is the real topic that I wanted to dwell on tonight, was this yellow Avatar single. This is an item that has always just really impressed me. Always been a little obsessed with this one. And I want to tell you a little Christmas story about why that is as we go tonight. But just to make sure you understand that it's not just me who's got a crazy fascination with this record. This is one of the most expensive underground heavy metal items you could want to track down. The last time a copy sold on eBay, to my knowledge, is the copy you see here. This is a screenshot from PopPsych, and a copy of the yellow vinyl Avatar was auctioned in November 2012, so about 9 years ago, and the final price, $9,000. Yeah, exactly. And to be clear, I dug into this auction a bit, and to my knowledge, it was a legitimate auction. This was not a case of somebody entering shill bids or getting drunk, typing in the wrong number, and then refusing to pay. No, this was a legit auction that went to completion, and the transaction was finalized. Somebody paid $9,000 for a copy of the Yellow Avatar EP. So what makes this record so expensive, and what's the deal with it? This is a story I've been piecing together for over 20 years now. So in this video, I want to share all the little, scraps of information I've been able to put together about this very rare and unknown heavy metal release. Before I start this story, something I want to make clear, there's going to be a couple of points along the way where I'm going to have to kind of vague things up a little bit. There are certain pieces of information I'm not going to share about this because they've been told to me in confidence by collectors over the years. I know several of the people that own this record, and some of them have paid an awful lot of money for it. And I doubt they would appreciate some idiot like me getting on YouTube and blabbing, hey, here's this person's name, and here's their eBay ID, and here's exactly the date they bought it and how much they paid for it, blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't want to dox anybody with this video whatsoever. So there's going to be a few things that I have to keep slightly vague. I can't connect every single dot here, but I can tell you a lot of what I know because I think it's just a really fascinating release. So here's the backstory. I first found out about the Avatar EP around 1996 or 1997. I was already a pretty avid heavy metal vinyl collector by then, loved Savatage, and so I found out about this. I saw it listed in John Allison's Heavy Metal, the Vinyl Years book, and immediately was like, oh, gotta have that. Gotta add that to my Savatage collection. Problem was, it turned out to be really hard to find. Mid-90s, this is pre-eBay, dawn of internet. You didn't have a lot of options for tracking rare records down. You went to record shows, you talked to a few mail-order vinyl dealers, asked pen pals. That was about it. You didn't have a lot of avenues to track something like this down. And I looked for a copy for 1 or 2 years and didn't see a single one, which was pretty frustrating. Then in December of 1998, I was poking around on eBay, and this was the early days of eBay. eBay was just starting to really get people's attention and start to blow up a little bit. It was a much smaller platform at the time. And I had been on it for several months, looking for heavy metal records and maybe Magic the Gathering cards. My wallet hurts in 2 ways, not just one. But yeah, I was looking around in December of 98 and saw a copy of the Avatar EP listed. It's like, yay, it's finally there. I've got a chance. But when I looked at the auction, it was kind of weird because the record was on yellow vinyl. And to my knowledge, it didn't come on yellow vinyl. I double checked, Allinson's book. He didn't have it listed as a colored vinyl variant, and he had listed those whenever he knew about them. So I was not sure what to make of it. A lot of times when you see a colored vinyl pressing like that of a rare record, it makes you very suspicious that it's a bootleg copy. And the Avatar EP had been bootlegged. I know for a fact that it had been bootlegged sometime either during the 1980s or the very early 1990s. So you got to be very careful when you're looking to buy a copy of this. The bootleg pressing, the cover is a slightly different shade of red. And there are some details on the back of the cover that are different that you have to be aware of. So yeah, I was very suspicious of this record I was seeing on eBay. So I started asking around with the contacts I had. I talked to 3 people. One of them was a vinyl dealer, and he told me flat out, that is not real. That's a bootleg. Has to be. The second one told me, I don't know about it. It's like, I've never heard of it coming on yellow vinyl, but I can't say for sure that it is a bootleg. So he was like undecided. The third person I contacted, and I don't remember her name, honestly, but she worked in conjunction with a European heavy metal publication. I honestly don't even remember how I had gotten in touch with her. This was pre-Metal Maniacs forum, pre-Lapland. None of that stuff was a thing yet. I'm guessing I contacted her through some very early Savatage fan forum. It's the only thing I can think of that I could have reached out to her through. But anyway, she wrote back and said, yeah, that's real. And I know it's real because it looks just like a copy that this guy I work with has. And she sent me a little JPEG picture of his copy. And so this just left me very, very confused. I had one person telling me flat out it's not real, one person telling me flat out it was real, and one person who said, I don't have any idea if it's real or not. I came to the conclusion that it's probably a bootleg, but I don't know for sure, but I'm going to play it safe and just assume it's a bootleg. Again, that didn't mean it was going to be a cheap record. Some people will still pay a lot for rare bootlegs, but that's where I came down on it. I still wanted to see how much the record would bring. I thought I might bid a little bit for it just to get a copy until I could get a quote unquote real copy. Well, folks never really got a chance to enter bids on it because a few days into the auction listing, the auction disappeared. Now, of course, this happens on eBay. It was very common back in that day and age, though. Part of the reason for that was it was extremely easy to contact people through eBay. I know for a fact that if you just clicked on somebody's username back then, you could get their telephone number. There was no intermediate clearance step, no filling out a little Kachka thing to prove you're not a bot. It's just like, oh yeah, you want this person's name, their address, their phone number? Click, here you go. So somebody apparently had contacted the seller and arranged to buy the record before the auction went to completion. And so that auction disappeared from eBay, never went to completion. So it's like, okay, well, that's gone. But that record stuck in my mind. And over the next year or two, I would find out a lot more about it. So from December 98, we fast forward several months to around March of 1999. Once again, poking around on eBay. I had a little eBay problem back then. I'm much better now, I swear. But yeah, in March 99, I noticed that there were a bunch of rare Savatage items being listed. And it turns out they were being sold by Steve Wockles, the longtime drummer on all their classic albums. Now, a lot of this was stuff like, drum heads, drum kit parts, relatively rare and high dollar stuff. This was out of my league. But nevertheless, I contacted him. Again, still was very, very easy to contact folks back then. And I asked him about that yellow Avatar I had seen listed. And he replied, was very nice. Part of the original email is copied and shown here. I still have the email all these years later. And he said, yeah, we had made 1,000 copies total. 20 out of the 1,000 were in yellow, and some of them were speckled with some black vinyl mixed in. This is the real McCoy. I've owned it since day one. Steve went on to mention that he no longer had copies on yellow vinyl, but that he also clarified there had been a rumor for years that some copies existed on red vinyl, that he had heard through the grapevine a couple of times that the band made something like 16 red vinyl copies, and this one mega collector in Chicago had uh, amassed all of them and was holding on to like the whole red vinyl pressing. And he said, that is complete baloney. We did not make any red vinyl copies. We made 20 yellow, 980 black. And so I was like, holy crap, that thing was real. And they were only 20 of them that were ever made. After this, jump forward into April of 2000, so about a year forward. And just for reference, here's what Steve was talking about when he said speckled, that yes, some of the copies have a noticeable amount of black kind of swirled into them. Now, this was not by pattern or by design like swirled vinyl is done today. This was just a fact that, you know, back then bands could get a discount if they would allow pressing companies to use up any odd colored vinyl left over from previous special orders. So basically the band got a discount by letting the pressing plant use up a little bit of leftover yellow wax. And then as the yellow was used up, well, they just started mixing the black in. They didn't stop and clean the whole thing and start, you know, fresh. It was like, nah, just keep it running and add the black. So some copies have this kind of, you know, black swirl in the yellow vinyl. So anyway, as I said, we jump forward from my conversation with Steve in March of 99 to April of 2000. And in April 2000, I was at a record show in North Carolina, and I got to talking to a dealer. I had a lot of heavy metal vinyl, and one way or another, the Avatar single came up in our conversation. And I told him, like, yeah, I talked to Steve Wacholtz about that. And he's like, that's interesting. I have two. In fact, I got a couple of copies from him before, he had, later auctioned all his stuff on eBay. So I was like, oh, holy crap, do you still have them? He's just like, no, they're long gone. So that brought the total up to 4. There had been the copy that the lady had sent me a picture of that her coworker owned. There was the copy on eBay that had disappeared from the site before the auction ended. And now there were 2 copies that had come from Wacholtz that he had sold to this dealer. And again, I've checked that story with collectors later on, and that is legit. The dealer was not just making up a big story or anything like that. He absolutely had gotten those 2 copies and had later sold them. So that brought the total to 4 copies. As we move on into the 2000s, in the mid 2000s, a couple of more copies ended up on eBay, and those did go to completion. The auction prices are no longer listed on PopPsych. They got taken down at some point. It's an important thing to remember about PopPsych. They do not archive every record ever sold, and they certainly don't keep all those listings forever. A lot of things that used to be included on PopPsych's page have been deleted. I don't know if they take some older ones down at a certain point. I know for a while they had a policy that the seller of an item could, fill out a little request thing and have their items deleted or never archived on PopPsych in the first place. So yeah, you can't use PopPsych as a complete listing history of eBay, not even close. But I do know for a fact that at least 2 more copies, were on eBay around that time, 2004, 2005 timeframe. Then there was no real activity on the yellow Avatar front for several years until we get to that auction I showed you earlier from 2012. And the deal with this one was the person selling it had been connected to PAR Records back in the day and still had this copy. And so they put it on eBay and let eBay do its thing. And yes, it was legitimately purchased by a collector for $9,000. And that listing is still there. I'm not showing the world anything with that listing that they can't go look at on PopPsych anytime they feel like. Right. After this auction, since then, I've only seen one other copy come up for sale. And it was the same seller who owned this copy. It turned out they had a second copy they had kept, and it's the copy that you're seeing in this picture that has a noticeable amount of black swirled into it. Over the years, I have seen pictures of most of the copies that are in collectors' hands, and most of them, maybe have just, a dot or two of black at most. Most of them are very yellow. This copy definitely has the most black swirled in of any of the copies I've seen. Interestingly, the copy that probably has the second most black mixed in was that original copy that disappeared off of eBay way back in December of '98. But it still only had like a few little wisps of black, not nearly as much as you're seeing in this particular copy. So this copy got listed on eBay. It probably would have been like early or mid 2013. The seller had waited several months after the previous auction. Then this one came up for sale, and they had a very high price tag on this one. Again, one copy had just sold for $9,000. This copy was kind of more unique, having more of the black swirl mixed in. I don't remember exactly, but the starting price or the buy it now price was around $20,000 or $25,000. Spoiler alert, nobody bought it. I may have been relisted with a slightly reduced price a little later on, but again, there were no takers. I talked to the seller about it quite extensively at the time. I made it clear, it's like, look, I'm not bidding on this. I'm not trying to buy this from you. This is a car. I am not looking to add a car to my record collection. I couldn't do that if I wanted to, but I just wanted some information. And they were very nice, when told me some of their history and stuff. But yeah, to my knowledge, this one, last I knew, it had not sold. And now they may have found another buyer since then and just sold it, through back channels. That's quite possible. But this copy brings the total that I'm aware of up to 9. All right. So there were a couple of copies there in the late 90s, the copy that the lady sent me the picture of, and the copy that disappeared from eBay. Then there were the 2 copies that Wachholz had sold to the dealer that I talked to in North Carolina in 2000. And those copies, changed hands a few times, I guess, and ended up in collectors' hands. There were 2 copies that ended up on eBay in the mid 2000s. There was an additional copy, I found out, a 7th copy that another European collector owned. And then there were these 2 copies that were sold by the person who had links to Par Records back in the day, one of which sold for $9,000, and this copy with the black swirl, which did not sell for $20,000. And those are the 9 copies I am aware of. In terms of prices, obviously we know what the one auction went for at $9,000. I'm not going to tie price tags to other specific copies, but some of those copies, they have sold in the range between about $1,500 and $4,000 to $5,000 is the price tag I've seen for some of those copies that have sold at different times over the years. That's all I want to say about other final prices for copies. So I don't know what every copy has sold for every time, to make that clear. Those are just, the prices I'm aware of fall into that $1,500 to $5,000 range. So yeah, it's a spicy meatball. It's the kind of thing most of us, of course, will never own, and most of us will never see a real copy of this, but it's still kind of neat to me just to track down and learn about this very unique piece of Avatar / Savatage / Trans-Siberian Orchestra's history. I have heard rumors that John Oliva still owns a copy of it. I've never been able to authenticate or substantiate that, so it's possible that would be a 10th copy that is known in collectors' hands. There is a small possibility that out of the 9 copies I just listed off, that there is a duplicate copy somewhere. For example, maybe that first copy that I got the picture of from the lady back in '98, maybe that's one of the copies that ended up on eBay that I saw later on at some point. So maybe I'm overestimating by about 1 copy. Most of the copies here, though, I know for a fact are distinct copies. I could track them down to specific collectors who all had them at the same time. But there's a chance that one of these might have been owned by somebody and then resold to a different somebody without my knowing about it. It's not like the world is telling me every time a copy of this thing sells, but I've tried to dig around a lot in collecting circles to learn about it, just because I think it's a really fascinating record. Last thing I'll point out is, whether there's 8 copies, 9 copies, or 10 copies known, it's also interesting that many copies have survived and are accounted for. If Wacholtz's number is correct and they only made 20 copies back in the day, then that means about half the copies are accounted for. And that's a pretty high percentage, in my opinion. You've got to remember, this was made in the early 1980s. Some of the copies of this have been destroyed, undoubtedly. Some copies got broken by accident, or some copies got thrown out when a person outgrew metal, or they became born again and it destroyed all their satanic records, or they just got taken to the landfill when they moved off to college and mom cleaned out all the junk from their room. Not all the copies made of this thing survive. So to me, it's pretty impressive that 8 or 9 copies not only have survived, but are in known collectors' hands. So that said, there's still maybe as many as 10 or 11 copies that are still out there that haven't been found. And even if some of them have been broken, destroyed, or lost, there's got to always be one more copy out there somewhere. So the next time you're at a record fair or at your local record shop, you see that box of singles sitting there, instead of just thinking, singles, I don't like singles, singles suck, maybe you want to take a few minutes and flip through there, because you never know what you're going to find. Someday, the right person is going to be in the right place, and they're going to find that record, which will be very, very cool. If you do, please let me know about it, and I'll add it to the tally of known copies. All right, that is the story of the Avatar Yellow Vinyl EP. Now, let's talk metal in the comments down below. Is there any particular metal rarity or oddity that you just got really obsessed with, that you found really fascinating and you just wanted to track down as much stuff about it as you possibly could? Which one just really caught your fancy and you just had to keep tabs on it as much as you could? What's your best rare metal find going out and digging in the wild? Did you pull anything cool off of eBay at some point in the past? That kind of thing still, of course, happens. It was a lot more common in the early days of eBay. Did you make any really cool backdoor score from a seller on eBay when you were hunting around for vinyl? Leave a comment below and we'll talk about it some more. But for now, that is going to do it. So until next time, everybody take care. And as always, keep banging your head. Just, don't bang your head anywhere close to yellow vinyl copies of Avatar. That's a very expensive record. You don't want to accidentally break it. Go bang your head someplace else, okay? All right. Till next time, take care.